Okay, next up, you've already seen him on Ashley's video. We have Matt Mitchell, who needs a little introduction after that video.
Yeah. On August 27th, 2015, I got a phone call that woke me up in the middle of the night. It was at 3:30 in the morning. On the other line was a frantic, panicked activist who I had met in events like this. They said, "Matt, did you get the email?" I looked at my phone. There's like a million messages in Signal. And it said, "Emergency, really need help." What had happened was someone had taken over their Twitter account. And at the same time, their organization's website went down. And at the same time, I looked at 4chan and Reddit, and I'm seeing information about this person. It's a digital attack. They didn't know what to do. How many people here have a plan? What would you do if you have an organization that's trying to do some social good or something progressive, an open internet? Who has a plan? Show of hands. They know what they would do. Anyone? No one? I can't see, the bright light. Okay. I'm going to talk to you about what you need to do when this happens. I'm going to give you 6 things that when you leave here, you won't be that person on the other line. But let me rewind a little bit. Let me answer why I would even get that call. Why would they call me? I'm a hacker, but it takes a hacker to catch a hacker. And unlike my brethren, I work with NGOs and nonprofits and people who are part of civil society trying to make this world a better place. Through crypto parties and events like that and trainings in cities and countries all over this world, I go where activists are to help them dealing with situations that happen, right? And through that experience, I see a lot. I was given a fellowship, Open Web Fellowship, by Mozilla and Ford Foundation, and they put me at this civil rights organization. That was my host organization called Color of Change in the United States. And in that time, I worked to kind of strengthen their digital security, strengthen their digital safety. And that's where I came up with these kind of 6 tenets that I'm sharing with you. This is the thing that can protect you from losing everything. All the work that you try to do is gone when someone takes all your emails, takes all your data, and harasses your staff. Okay, so the first thing, number 1 on the list, is to really think about what are we doing for safety of our team? Usher people out to a new place so they can feel safe, so you can begin. Then you can kind of start with the more digital stuff. Have my little notes here. Have a security policy. What is a security policy? You could think of it kind of to begin with as the things that you're already doing to be kind of digitally safe. You might have an organization and everyone has a password on their laptop. Maybe that's where the policy begins. Write down those things that you think that everyone's doing and find out if everyone really is. By working with people, and your organization might be a huge nonprofit that has an office, or it might just be a group of people who meet in the living room every couple of weeks, right? But you do have something that you already do. And kind of institutionalize that and broadcast that. You'll realize that not everyone actually does these things. Oh, everyone has a password on their on the computer? I don't, but now you do. Once you do that, you can build up on that. You can add things to it, we're all going to secure our communications with an encrypted messaging app like Signal or Threema, or Telegram. But if you don't have that list, there's nothing for you. Sometimes I get called to help an organization, and I'm well, what are you doing right now? So let me try to rule out some things. And no one knows what everyone's doing. And it takes a lot of time and money to get to that place, okay? So get that kind of policy there. Write down those things, the things that you know that everyone is complying 95 or 100% in doing, and then add things slowly to it, okay? The second thing I would say is, to be digitally safe as an organization, you need to think about a checklist, a list of what would I do if an incident happened, it's a matter of time before something happens. It might be small, but you should have exactly what you would do. You decide on it. If our Twitter account gets like taken over, we're going to do these steps in this order. You know, if it appears that someone else is writing an email, you know, acting like they're us, we would do these things in this order. And that checklist is given out to everyone who works with the organization. You know, this way, when they notice something, they feel empowered to just pull it out and just do the things. They don't have to worry like, well, should I really be talking to this person who's higher up in the organization? Or who am I to say that we should like stop doing these things? You know, that checklist is what really saves people. You know, I've had clients who come to me and they have that list and I'm like, okay, great. Did you follow it? They're like, yes. I'm like, great. We do not have to worry about a lot of things. You know, so you can think of that as kind of like an incident response plan. If this incident happens, this is what always our response will be, right? The third thing on this list of 6 things is have a data retention policy. So kind of email retention policy. What is that exactly? You can think of it as, you know, you don't keep all your money in your home. You don't keep all your cash right there laying on a counter table, right? You put some here, you put some there. Same thing for your data. If I'm telling you that it's inevitable someone's going to get into your inbox, the first email they see shouldn't be, welcome to this email account, right? They'll be able to take everything from you if everything's in one place. So those older things that are fallen out of fancy and they're just there, you do a search and they're kind of in the way, archive them, move them off. You know, you don't need to delete them. Get them out of the way. Whether that's email, whether it's a database that you're of keeping of people you work with. You know, I remember I was working with an organization that worked with undocumented people, refugees and immigrants, people whose very identity is at risk. Keeping a database of those people's names, every person you've ever worked with forever, is not a good idea. So again, this data retention is retiring some things, moving them away. The fourth thing you can think of is, you know, there's a weakest link policy, kind of like, you know, it's a weakest link thing going on when it comes to digital safety and security. If you are, you know, a journalist and you're working on a very dangerous beat, or, you know, you're working on investigations, you probably have all this stuff taken care of. You know, you do all the things. So a hacker is not going to target you. You know, you're getting paid for getting the job done fast. You're going to target the intern. You know, you're going to target someone who's just there as a volunteer. You know, so those people, all people need to be protected. It's not just like, you know, these 5 people are the most at risk. It's like a herd immunity. You know, one person in the office is sick, everyone gets sick. Same thing happens in this case. So understand this weakest link. You know, the actual security of your organization is equal to the person who does the least. That's where you really are. Okay? Another thing you can think about is changing the onboarding, right? You bring someone into the organization, they get interviewed, they're super excited, they want to do a great job for you. At this point, you introduce things that no one else is doing, you know? We do this for security. You know, we make sure that everyone has their password set up this way. They use a password manager. Everyone has to use this app when they're messaging each other. The new person wants to do a good job, and that person is going to actually do this stuff. And then you begin organizational change, one person at a time, from these new people. You change your offboarding. When someone leaves the organization, you know, you say, hey, what do you have the keys to? What do you have the Twitter password? Do we have a share that we shared out to you? You know, was there a day in an emergency that we kind of like quickly, here's the document, get it to this person while they're at the airport gate? You know that better than anyone, the person who's leaving. Ask that person, right? Ask them. And then you'll be able to mitigate a lot of harm. Sometimes I go to a place and they're like, yeah, we've been sharing tons of documents on this, you know, third party like Google service or something like that. And I'm like, well, who are these people? Oh, I didn't even realize they're still there, you know? It's important to kind of stop this. And I think, let me try to make sure. Another thing that I tell people, and this is kind of the last thing, right, to be digitally safe is, you know, when you're running from a disaster, like a, you know, if a nuclear bomb goes off, you're going to go to the like bunker and just hang out there, right? Eat your canned goods and wait it out, right? You need to do the same thing in your organization, because a nuclear bomb could be, you know, the people who directly fund you, they get hacked and all your financial data gets broadcasted across the internet, because these things have happened, right? So test out this bunker, practice. I literally tell people take a shoebox and write down some incidents of things that have happened or could happen. Maybe there's an internet shutdown where you are. Maybe all of a sudden this app that you use, goes offline for 3 days, right? What would we do in this scenario? You spend an hour a month just talking about these incidents, these issues. How would you deal with them? You institutionalize this thing so the time when you have to do it, you have a sense of being there. And you kind of know what you would do. The anxiety has been lowered, and you have some hope. These are the secrets. These are the keys that, through years and years of helping people, I've found. And I think it's so important for people to kind of instill that and use it in their organization to be digitally safe. And I think, that's that. I would like to kind of open up for questions. I think questions are really important. So whether it's about the things that I spoke about or anything about your digital safety and security. Thank you.
Anyone have a question for Matt? On the front row here.
Front row.
Do you want to shout and he'll repeat the question? All right.
No gold shirt today, sorry.
Thanks for the tips, very, very useful. So one of them was to develop checklists for what you do in different situations. I mean, how should you figure out what the items on your checklist should be? Exactly.
I would not tell you to talk to someone like myself because it has to be something that you'll actually do, right? So you just pretend the Twitter account is taken over. What would you do? Maybe you'd just freak the F out, right? So after that, there's someone you would call. Maybe you would contact Twitter. You'll realize that that's not really a good option, right? But in that time, you'll come up with things that will actually end up on this list. And then maybe you'll have someone like myself or someone who's the nerd in your world, give them some, caffeine or human contact, right? And then let them know, take a look at this. Does this look sound to you? That is my best advice. Because if you go to a website and you're like, this is what you should do, I guarantee you that is not what you will do when it really happens. It's outside of your normal logic, okay? So thank you. Next question.
This one.
I'm not the person, you're the person.
Yeah, please, your own.
Thanks very much, that was really useful. I was wondering, if you're not necessarily in an NGO, as in it's not like a formal structure, but it's like volunteer-led, grassroots-led, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
How do you get people on board? Because you don't really have onboarding and offboarding, that's
I mean.
So how do you get people to get involved with all of these secure messaging, all of that kind of thing?
Yeah, totally. I come from a hip-hop kind of punk rock tradition. 500 people trying to have a consensus meeting, right? There's no onboarding. This person wants to work. Everyone in this room probably knows someone who cares about an issue. So you tell them, this thing that we care about, so we're donating our time and our energy to try to do it, we're putting that at risk by not being safe. Because there's a tug of war. We do this stuff because it's right. We do this stuff because it's good. But every time we have a little win, someone has a little loss. And every time we have a huge win, we did it, someone has a huge loss. And that person is not used to losing. And they will use everything in their power to make that not happen again. You might not even realize that you are a thorn in the side of someone very powerful. You are so close to in making real change happen. Let them know that that's at risk. And in those spaces, trust me, that becomes super serious. They're like, I'm looking out for the person to my left and right, and for this huge mission.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Over here.
Hi there. I work for an organization where security and sort of these conversations and policies are very separate from our day-to-day operations. And instead of a general, so that type of lack of knowledge can sometimes generate paranoia. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's sort of your head in the sand, complete denial.
Yeah.
So how do you introduce this type of conversation, not to spark paranoia, but to sort of spark that type of curiosity and type of conversations with folks who are haven't really thought about that. That could never happen to us.
Okay. Well, the first thing you want to do is anyone, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in that organization, right? As long as you care, you'll just say, look, sometimes there's a security person or there's a nerd, That's the nerd's problem, right? They do our security stuff and they handle that thing. But that's not how this stuff should be, When you have a sexual harassment issue, when you have a diversity issue, that's something that you just have to know in the organization. These are just rules. It has nothing to do with your job, but everyone in the org accepts that these are things that could happen, and this is what we do to make sure that it doesn't. We have a code of conduct. We have a certain policy. We have norms that we enforce. The digital stuff needs to be there. It just needs to be a norm. You just make some digital norms, you know? Maybe you introduce it by saying, you know, we're going to have a little brown bag session, and we're just going to talk about what would we do if this happened, because it happened to someone or an organization or a group of people who do something like what we do, but in another place, maybe another country. Because, trust me, I live in the United States. I know that in 4 years, everything can change, you know? You know, I was born here in the UK, and, you know, whether you were all in for staying in or all about getting out, you know, Brexit is a real thing. Today, you're living one place, and tomorrow, you're living in a totally different country, you know? People in Catalonia will tell you that, right? All right.
Great. Well, you've got a massive crowd out there.
Can a massive crowd.
These people?
One last thing I want to say is, you know, there aren't a lot of people doing this work who have this expertise, who are deciding to, like, you know, take like a 90% pay cut and work in this space, right? I need your help, you know, and people like me, we need your help. You know, I have a security firm now that's nonprofit, and, you know, find those people who are doing this stuff, and we really need to have these frank conversations if we're trying to really affect real change. Thank you.
That's great.